Hold on. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'll just reading your bio. It's great to have you back on. How's everything been?
Good, and I apologize that I was on Pacific time, and
I knew it.
sorry about that.
No, I knew. I said there has to be a time zone mix up here because
Yeah,
we spoke several times today. But either way, we still have an entire hour to work with if you're still good for it, and I'd love to just jump on into it if you don't mind.
definitely.
Okay, wonderful. So, welcome back. First of all, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the fourth book that's coming out? Because that was a pretty well known trilogy, and I can't wait to learn more about this. Here it is up on the screen: the geoengineered transhuman, the hidden technologies of HARP, chemtrails, 5G, 6G, which I have a question on that, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, and the scientific effort to transform humanity. I'll tell you, Elana, it seems like 2025 is pedal to the metal when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, and they started it off with a real bang and a whimper. And this, by the way, people get confused. My last book, the third book, was Geoengineered Transhumanism, and now I have a publisher, Inner Traditions, and they're the ones who chose this title, which I think is good because I'm not exactly reiterating what I said in the previous book. I'm taking it further and shifting the point of view more towards synthetic biology. But they really made me buckle down, really, Frank, in order to. Oh shoot! I rewrote 3 chapters to make them more hard hitting, and this whole book, it's coming out February 4th. And it's cheaper than the last one. It's less long than the last one. It's hopefully a little simpler, but I have to do what I have to do on that. And then that is the kind of precursor to the book I'm writing now, which is on synthetic biology as it relates, again, to the geoengineering. Basically, just to put it really simply, we're being sandwiched between. It's sort of the as above and so below. Above, we're getting hit with geoengineering that is completely packed with chemicals, nanotechnology, all of it made and compacted in order to be able to go beyond the blood-brain barrier after we breathe it in from the chemical trails. And they match with the jab in the arm. What's in the serums is almost identical in some ways to what is coming down from the sky. So, when you figure it out, Big Pharma is involved in both. It's involved in what's in the jet fuel, what's being spilled out into the atmosphere with other agendas than the chemical trails initially were. And then you have the jab in the arm. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is bringing the two together now that I have proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that geoengineering has 7 different operations. And we have to at least be aware of them, and that some of them are biological, and I would say synthetic biological. And that's a beast of another color. So that's kind of what the new book is. I recommend everyone see it. And as far as the geoengineered fires going on, I just went through that chapter, by the way, in preparation for your show. I have great chapter on how you geoengineer fires.
Well, we're going to get to that.
And how they're coming, how they're able to do it from the sky. A lot of people don't understand that the atmosphere is 100% ionized now, and it's kept ionized all the time by the chemical particulates, the nano stuff, the heavy metals, all of that stuff coming down. Yes, it has definitely transhumanism involved in it, but it is also there to keep the sky ionized for all of these electromagnetic operations that are going on, like the geoengineered fire in Los Angeles.
So when you say ionized, you mean that there is almost like a static electricity, a charge? What do you mean by that?
That's it. And I think static electricity is a good example. It means that it's constantly ready for more transmissions. And now that the entire world is wireless, and we depend upon wireless, I mean, how many people have wired computers? Almost none. So they keep it sort of percolating electrically. And then all the billions and billions of operations that are being sent through our atmosphere are able to do that with minimal effort. And that's really important if you have in mind that you also want to be a threat to all the different nations on the planet. Because remember, they're up from the last time I was on your show. They're operating out of Kardashev, the Kardashev model. Nikolai Kardashev was he was an astronomer in the Soviet era, and his idea was, if you want to be a true empire and have a true, you're going to need a true space age, and that space age is going to depend upon the military doctrine of full spectrum dominance of the planet, of the sun, and of your planetary system and your galaxy. So it may sound crazy and sound like some sort of fairy tale that these scientists are telling each other, but no, they're after this, and this idea of control. And when they say full spectrum dominance, they're talking about mainly the electromagnetic spectrum, and that's all the way from gamma rays to radio waves. So you've got this big spectrum that you need to be dominating, completely dominating, and that's what's really ruling the roost in Western politics now.
It seemed, and I guess we get little glimpses of that when, for example, everybody gets together in Davos and they're talking about grander ideas for the world, even though they don't very often talk about going out and conquering our sun and the power of the sun. They're always talking about blocking it, and they're always. And then of course when it comes to us. They've kept our aspirations and our ambitions very, very tiny. I mean, they want everybody, going backwards and kind of, reconsidering what gender they are. So they don't have average people looking up at the stars and wondering how we're going to get out there. That's for sure. They've kept us very, very small-minded in that. But, I was to start putting all this together about what we've really been looking at over the last 4 to 6 weeks. I was thinking about you over Christmas because when we right around the time that we booked this date, because there was already so much going on between the drone madness, which is now being written off as hysteria in, over these very sensitive airspaces with no pushback, or these no successful tracking of these objects to any kind of point of origin. Then we had the mixed messages between local and national authorities on what the threat level of these things were, or even if there were offshore motherships. We were getting all types of crap in November and December, and there was a real physical presence there, and then it's gone, and now we're being gaslit into we were imagining the whole thing. But right around the time that the news coverage began petering out, we were into analyzing what seemed to be different craft materials too. Like some of them looked a little bit more conventional, like drones and planes. Others looked like they were plasma based and seemingly intelligent in the way that they responded to the thoughts of some of those people who were observing them. So what do you have on the drone aspect? And then we're going to move to the fog and then the fire.
Well, that's good. You're putting it in the right order. And let me give you a clue to how to read the disinformation news and all the propaganda that they're feeding us. We have to add a new element. And I mean, some people are already doing it, but not everybody. And what that is when you're hearing about all these things, you tend to, because of the school education you had, you were taught, just as I was, to compartmentalize. First you have English, then you have science the next period, then you have history the next period, then you have PE the next period. You're compartmentalizing your knowledge, and you're not really ever really taught how they interrelate. and a way to connect the dots so that you get a whole mental picture of a psyop, for example, the one like the one we're undergoing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a key to understanding this. When the drones came out, I was on Sasha Stone's show, and he very kindly said to me, the opening salvo was, "Well, Elana, how does it feel to have been right about just about everything?" And I said, "Well, it feels good, except it's pretty sad. You know, it's pretty sad that I am right." And but then he wanted to know how we're going to confront this and what we can do about it. Well, the first thing is we're going to have to learn to really think, and it's going to have to be a different kind of thinking than the one we were taught in school, where we separated everything out. It's just the same way they did the science with the paperclip Nazis and all the good American minds that were put on a leash called compartmentalization, where what they were working on, they never knew the finished product. So all manner of evil was able to be shuttled through with probably many Christian scientists and Buddhist and Jewish and et cetera, where they thought they were doing good. They thought they were doing good for the world. So this compartmentalized thinking, we've got to wean ourselves away from that. Yes, when you're buckling down and studying, you may have to, concentrate on one thing, then you go to the next thing, then you go to the next. I mean, I do that. But at some point, you're going to have insights into how they work together. And that's what happened with the drones. When Sasha asked me on his show, "So what do you think of that drone situation?" And I said, well, to me, it looked to me like they were simply announcing the fact of these sophisticated drones, and they were making it public. And you had that really almost like insects. I'm thinking of one clip I saw where the drones are all hovering, and you see New York in the background. And you have this like invasion of the insects kind of look. Next, right within 2 days, I checked the dates, was the chemical fog. Now, the chemical fog, and it was highly chemical. In fact, we've got it today. We haven't had it like everybody else has, but today we've definitely got it. It's been foggy all day. So what you have in the chemical fog, you'd have to know, well, they're going to have probably some aluminum. They're going to have some barium, strontium, all the norms that are coming down with chemtrails on a daily basis. But they're going to have smart dust, a lot of smart dust, because they have to do that fire. In LA is one thing. Yes, it seems like an overkill to do the whole nation, but it wasn't the whole nation that had the fog. It was specific places that had the fog, and they had it for several days. I was reading about how in London they had fog for 8 days, nonstop fog. Now that's a little over the top.
Isn't London known for its fog, though, Elana?
Yeah, but not in 8-day chunks. You have respites in between here and there, and certain times of the day you have more fog. Now this was thick fog, and you saw some of the photos, I'm sure, and some of the film footage.
Yeah, I've seen. I had
stuff
some
lying
here
on the ground, and it was white, and this looked like smart dust to me, and you would need a lot of that if you were going to do a full scale attack. Los Angeles, as you know, if you drive on 101 or 1, it spreads out for miles. It's long and looks like, they just sort of threw confetti and it sort of arose out of the confetti. It's not a well-planned city by any means. So it looked to me like those 3 things were connected. The drones was a clue to us. Hey, this is how we're going to do things from now on. You might as well get used to these drones because you're going to see a lot of them. And of course, those are the big drones. We haven't seen their little tiny ones in that sort of announcement fashion. And then with the chemical fog, right away I thought, oh, this is just like they were going to do, like when they did the earthquake in Fukushima. They had a very, very big bunch of chemtrails over that area, over Japan, at Honshu. And so I always know the signs of imminent attack. And that struck me as being that. So that's how I connected them.
Well, how did you, as far as the fog went, because like that was another thing there. I saw, first of all, I saw an excerpt from your book, a section of the book that's just coming out, Dusty Plasmas, Smart Dust, and Neural Dust. Now, I figured that would be a good way to get your thoughts on this now forgotten week of the fog being reported on in certain parts of the country, which would be unexceptional if not for, again, widespread reports that it was leaving some kind of a white powdery residue. Other people were talking about it was there's some respiratory issues, strange smells, whatever. But then again, they're spraying so much over here since Christmas. It's been nuts. My mother and my daughter took a picture together at the beach about, I don't know, just a little under a week ago. And they sent me a picture that they took together with the beach behind them. The sky is just, it's marbleized with this screen. It's a screen of, it's so sad. I don't know what the hell it is. You can't tell me that it's just incidental, residue from air traffic. And it happens in waves. The air traffic doesn't cease over here, especially near the Long Island Sound. We got all these major international airlines all over the place, and some days it's clear as a bell. Some months it's clear as a bell. Then all of a sudden, it's almost like they're on a schedule, and the spraying begins again. I can't make sense of it, but I notice it, and I just don't know. What do you think? What do you think that prep thing's for? I mean, I didn't hear anything about fog out there in Los Angeles prior to the fires, but what about over here? Was it just biological with us?
Well, you've got one atmosphere, and what's happening in one place will impact another place. It's sort of the butterfly's wing thing. You can't not breathe this stuff and be on planet Earth. You are going to have to breathe this stuff. But when they begin to, it would scare people. Here's a scenario. I mean, I'm constantly second guessing these guys, right? The scenario, they need to scare the population that the drone deliveries are going to be much more. And part of that is going to be what we're going to see in Los Angeles. But you don't want to necessarily spell it out right away. So you kind of hit various areas where you've got other stuff in there. I mean, they're always adding to the chemical soup that they're unloading and giving to us in order to go through our blood-brain barrier, to be lodged in our tissues, particularly our lungs, to affect our blood because of what, for both the vaxxed and unvaxxed now are revealing that their blood simply does not look very good. So, there's the concept of shedding that's being passed around, that the vaxxed are shedding so that the unvaxxed are affected. All of this is part and parcel of us figuring out inductively what they have done to us, basically. This is the problem with the national security state. It's loaded with secrets. It seems to derive a great deal of satisfaction from shocking the public, controlling the public. It's bred in circuses like it's always been, but this technological aspect makes it much more serious, as I know, because now they're finding that there's this very strange follow-up to the CV-19 inoculations that has to do with what do they call it? Turbo cancer.
Yes.
I mean, we're having to come along the trail that we ourselves are walking in our incarnation here on the earth as human beings, and we're having to figure out the secrets of these overpaid elites, the bloodlines. We hear the difference between today and 20 years ago is that back then you had to really dig for certain things about covert manipulation going on behind the scene. Now, shoot, they're out in public all over the place. We've got their names, we've got their addresses, we know who they are, we know what the families are, we know what the corporations, who's on the corporate boards. We know all this, but we can't touch them. We can't touch them, and we can't prove this assault because they're using invisible technology like 5G, 6G. You can't see it. You can measure it if you have the right equipment. But now we're getting into the big money where you're going to need big equipment in order to see on the microscopic level, for example, or you're going to have to, to see nanotechnology and how it really works. You're going to have some hefty equipment that's going to show you the swarms of these nanotech that we now have to deal with because they're in our bodies and brains. So this is this is what I'm involved now with Dr. Anna Minhalcha, MD, and Dr. David Nixon in Australia, MD. And they're doing a lot of microscopy and looking at human blood to see living human blood, just a few minutes out of the body kind of thing, in order to see how our blood's looking. Well, it's looking like crap. Everyone they're looking at, all the blood of the vax and unvaxxed, this is scary stuff.
But what does it look like? So when you say it looks like crap, what does it look like?
Well, you know how red blood cells are supposed to look. They're supposed to be like round and they're bumping around like little billiard balls in the blood, and but instead you're seeing a lot of rouleau, which rouleau is where you've got flat pancake stacks of them sort of glommed together, and then you've got all this debris in the blood surrounding the erythrocytes. And what is this debris? Well, a lot of it seems to be crystals forming. They're seeing self-assembly of strange entities, and all of this they have no nomenclature for. Right? Everybody has that little wiggly thing, and that bigger thing, that big circle there. They're seeing how these things are. The big part of it is self-assembly. Mm-hmm. So is that stuff being delivered from the sky as well? Well, it appears to be that it's coming from the sky as well because of independent scientist Clifford Carnicom many years ago was studying the Morgellons. And the Morgellons was definitely falling from the sky. There was no question. And I was one of the early people that, my blood was looked at, my saliva was looked at, and wow, lo and behold, there's these entities. And it was the first time I ever saw a synthetic biology creature. It was basically gobbling up the iron in my blood cells.
In your own sample. Now that's interesting there because you and I never spoke about Morgellons, and that's something that's often brought up and debated on the internet. That's where I've always seen it. And whenever there's any kind of a visual aspect to these topics, there will always be a picture of under somebody's skin, almost like there is a black wire that's moving around under somebody's skin. You're saying that was something that was self-assembled, or it came down from the sky as this like hair-like thing already, or it is self-assembled inside.
It was at that point in the synthetic biology. It was already formed that filament. We call them filaments. And it took Clifford Carnicom a long time to figure out how to break into it because the normal means, chemical means, did not prove effective. But he wanted to know, because that was made of a polymer, and that was obvious. But he wanted to break into it to see what was inside. And when he broke in, he found organs. And then he began to look at those. And all the time he was working, this was back in the early 2000s. This would be 2005 through 2010, 2011. He would then send what he had found and all of his careful, meticulous scientist notes to the CDC, to the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and they would never respond. But I don't know if I told you the last time I was on your show that the one thing he did get out of that was that he had a software on his computer whereby he could tell who visited his site, and it was just all the alphabet agencies in Washington, D.C. and Colorado Springs. They were all looking to see what he was finding on his own, but none of them reached out to do his experiments in typical scientific method, or to give him any feedback or anything. They pretty much ignored him. It was very frustrating to him because we were friends, and he really needed someone who knew something about this, but the ones who knew about it were not telling, and it left a lot. I don't know if you remember, but people would have that happen. They'd have this thing underneath their skin, and then they'd feel like things were creepy crawling under their skin, and they'd go into a doctor in a hospital or a clinic and say that, and immediately they'd have this diagnosis of what was it called? A diagnosis that they were imagining it.
It's psychosomatic.
The diagnosis was very humiliating for people because they actually were perceiving the effects of this thing, and yet were not believed and were sent down to the psych ward. And then the problem is they stopped coming to clinics and things because who wants a bunch of stuff on their that indicates that they're psychologically impaired or imbalanced? And it was a way to stop people from coming to tell medical professionals what they were actually experiencing from synthetic biology. We didn't know the term synthetic biology then. Well, that would have been the early part of this millennium.
Let me ask you this before we move on to things like 5G and 6G and anything else that pops up along the way, because it's sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming for people to sit down and listen to a conversation like this, and it's just it seems like there's no good news. But there has to be some solution somewhere. And to your point about, hey, the way that people are perceived when they walk into a doctor's office or an emergency room and they feel like they've got this crawling sensation and there's something living under their skin, and there's no way to really there's no real interest in investigating that. And Western medicine is a lot more prone to just say this is psychosomatic. It's something that they're just conjuring up in their head, and it's materializing in some way. The brain body connection is very strong, and they must have a lot of stress in their lives. Where do we go? Where do you go from here? If there is a growing interest or a growing investigation into how much we have been infiltrated in our bodies, if we are in a situation where the environment is just so, I don't know, it's just kicked up and injected with all this nano dust, this smart dust, these particles, if we're huffing it, if we're eating it, if we're drinking it, if it's just all over the place, then you would imagine that this stuff would, if these micro tiny computers would be just jammed up in every blood test we've ever, every blood draw, it would just be everywhere at this point. How would they still be invisible? And at the same time, if nobody's going to listen to us, how do you clean it out? Is it all chelation? Is it all, what do you do to give yourself a fighting chance to keep yourself free from this stuff?
Right, and that's exactly what's going to be in this next book I'm now writing. But I wanted to say the term I couldn't remember was you'd get slapped with a diagnosis of delusional parasitosis. I mean, come on. So what's going on is, you're right, this is the tiny world. This is the invasion of the tiny world. Might be a way you could do some sort of TV series on it. You're going to need expensive equipment in order to see it, though not always. I always remind people of this fantastic video that Jamie E. Lee. Did you know Jamie Lee?
No.
Yeah, he came out first as a flat earther, and I think he got dismissed at that point, which was a shame because he had other things he was interested in. Where he was obviously a very bright guy. He had been a Wall Street broker and made a fortune, and then turned in his chips and moved out to California and bought a big giant ranch and then began to investigate all these different things. He wrote 14 books. They're mostly free on the internet, by the way. Anyway, he wrote one on the Paradise, California fires, and he also did a 100 video series called Paradise Lost about the Paradise fires. And living close to Santa Rosa, he went to the fires, those California fires in 2017, 2018, and he videoed a ton of stuff. His videos are under the moniker of A Plane, Plane, Truth. Jamie is now dead, thanks to having been electromagnetically targeted for a few years to the point where he couldn't hold any food down and drank juice for months and then just wilted away to nothing. He lost the will to live. I'm very sad about that still. It was last summer. He was a really great videographer, by the way. So he has this video called Paradise Lost number 51 that I highly recommend to people to watch because he's interviewing an anonymous retired nanomaterials scientist. And they're looking at drone footage of the Paradise Fire and going down a road, watching what looked to be like fire embers sort of racing down the road because there's probably a wind behind them. They're blowing down the road and they can actually ignite things. And as they're going, they're discussing what this technology is that they're looking at that they think are fire embers, because they're not fire embers. And the wind was not actually going in that direction either, I think Jamie says in the video. Okay, so the materials scientist says, right, that's nanotechnology, and it's a transceiver. So each of those little nanos, you can't see them individually, but once they consolidate into a swarm, you really see that it almost looks like a Roman phalanx as they're going down, barreling down the road. And, and there's some of them are going out and collecting information. And you can tell if you have the concept of nanosensors, you can tell that these are also nanosensors. They're picking up data from the environment, and it's going to central headquarters where all of this stuff is controlled by AI systems, I would assume. And the nano guy is saying, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And these nanomaterials are very valuable for big operations like what's going on here in Paradise.
What about wait, has anybody ever just said anything about electromagnetic frequencies that could actually be beneficial? For example, we always hear about the danger that society faces with any kind of electromagnetic pulse. I mean, our mutual friend Jim Lee has been on this show many times and has talked about how it would be so cheap and inexpensive to shield our most critical electrical infrastructure from electromagnetic pulse in this country. But, unprotected, it can just be death of so many millions. When you talk about nanotechnology, which, nano, it just means we're talking about microscopic pieces of a network. It's still a computer. It's essentially electrical. We're probably charging it. I want to talk about that in a second. But is there any way to just like blanket disable it all by a little electromagnetic pulses from time to time? Does our body have any ability to naturally pass it, or what? Does anybody talk about that?
I think that if we were more educated about the different frequencies of electromagnetism, that there are ways to ameliorate its presence in your home, in your workplace, There is shielding. As we know, a lot of people are coming up with various things. Like I wear this sort of amulet here. It's put out by Biogeometry, I think the site is called, recommended by Tom Cowan, MD, as being able to ameliorate any of the frequencies that I'm picking up in my daily life, because they're just everywhere now in people's homes, and 5G and 6G, whatever, and keeping my biome relatively safe. So I think you have to assume that a lot of us are scrambling to figure out our relationship with electromagnetics and taking seriously the present situation of a lot of the technologies we have to deal with. You can't see them. You can't see them. And if you can't see them, you can't pick them up and kind of look at, and see what you think and try different things out and see what they do. No, you can't do that. You have to actually build a picture of it in your mind. And from careful reading, and from your perceptions of the impact that you're having. The people who are electromagnetically sensitive, the ES people, as I think they're called, they must have it really hard, where they notice if they go sit here in the house, they suddenly, feel nauseous, and they have a headache and all this, and they're going, well, why can I go in another part of the house and I'm fine? So we're all having to do that in an era in which we were purposely dumbed down in the education system. Now, am I going to look at that as being just happenstance? I don't think so. I think I'm going to say that I remember in the 70s, that's the advantage of being older. I remember in the 70s, 1973, in fact, when they came out with this big, fat book from Washington, D.C., centralized government, about the school system and how it needed to do this and that and leave no child behind and blah, blah, blah. All of these things that were summarily dumbing people down. And so, it seems to me, what I'm saying to you, and I don't think it's falling on deaf ears, I'm saying this whole thing is planned. And we don't have, we're waiting for the authority figures or the media to tell us what to do. And we're also, a lot of us are making the assumption that they will do that because they have our best interest at heart. Now, you and I, Frank, don't we know that's not true?
I have to imagine that. Yes, I know. And also, when we talk about Los Angeles in particular, we've done a decent amount of airtime over the last week discussing all of the conventional and political reasons for these inferno-like conditions, that we've seen in California since these multiple fires have popped off. But since when you come on, we really engage in a lot of parapolitical talk, the real issues, the real reality behind what most people are getting as the mainstream show. I'd love for you to expand on any. The agendas aren't even hidden at this point as far as Los Angeles' future.
That's right.
The Olympic Games are returning in 2028 over there. The city itself has published their vision for Los Angeles transformation into a so-called smart city. And then, of course, for all of us, the big 2030 year is only we're 5 years away. I mean, the very famous 2030. That's for everybody. But since Los Angeles is under the microscope right now, I guess this did not surprise you that there are big smart city plans for rebuilding and rebirth and redefining how the whole city functions. And now here is this gigantic, clearing fire.
Yeah, and again, I returned to my little concept that the drones were marched out first, these big drones, looking like insects attacking New York City. And then next came the chemical fog that completely enshrouded people and made a lot of people sick. And I don't know how they're doing with that. But the next thing that happens is LA. Okay, so I'm going to look at that as a small narrative. And I do believe that they do this. They have small narratives. it's almost, to me, I don't know if you know this about me, Frank, but I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner. I am a student of following, to the best of my ability, the machinations of a society based on secret societies that are running things, like the 6 million Freemasons in the world. And certainly America is run by Freemasons and maybe Knights of Malta, the Catholic breed, and others. So what I'm wondering is, regarding the smart city in LA, is there, aren't they just clearing the deck now? Very similar to what they did. I mean, they basically destroyed Paradise, and they are now rebuilding it. So, did they just choose out of the hat the name Paradise? I don't think so. And what about Palisades? I mean, don't you have a good feel when you say the word Palisades? You're going to go on rides. You're going to have a good time, and it's like they're saying that fantasy world of America is over, folks.
It's all trauma. There's no doubt about it, and not to go too far into not to overreact and overcorrect in saying it puts yourself in a position where every time a forest fire breaks out now, it's going to be because it was planned that way. This is just the way that the world works as a natural unit. But there's a lot more on top of these, and I don't leave it all to bureaucratic mismanagement or ideological blindness or anything else like that. There's something very symbolic about Paradise, about the Palisades. There's something very symbolic about these from the ashes, the phoenix rising kind of narratives that are coming out, and again, it's just all about making people uncomfortable and unsure setting for the future. It makes everybody.
It's about far more than that. It's about manipulating the subconscious. I'm telling you, that is how you control large populations. You manipulate the subconscious, and a lot of people are not very educated about the difference between like a subconscious and a superconsciousness and a unconsciousness and all these terms that used to be part of the culture as a knowledge base. Kind of like it used to be that you'd hear people making biblical allegorical references about Moses and blah blah blah. It was sort of a base of culture, which is no more. It's no more. You can't assume that the culture now knows just about anything from the past. Would you agree?
I would, and you know what? I think this is where I'll throw one of the last things at you, which, because you're talking about consciousness and you're talking about control, and we've already discussed a little bit of 5G. We've definitely talked about it in past broadcasts, but this one, 6G. We know that sixth generation wireless is on the way, but it hasn't really cracked the mainstream too much outside of speculation as to what is going to differentiate it from fifth generation. And the one thing that sticks out to me is the first thing that I came across. It was from Popular Mechanics in January of 2023. Here's the headline. Scientists want to use people as antennas to power 6G. Now, here's listen to this first line over here. Hold on, where is it? We don't know yet exactly how 6G wireless technology is going to work, but researchers at the University of Massachusetts Amherst believe that using humans as antennas to power 6G may be the most viable way to, listen to the choice of words, harvest additional energy that would otherwise get wasted. Now, Elana, I mean, 25 years ago, if you were to reference the marriage of technology and mankind as a means of harvesting energy, people would tell you that you should stop watching The Matrix. It's just a movie. You're going nuts. But then again, as somebody like you who comes from your background of study, I know Rudolf Steiner would have not have been surprised by this. He was talking about energy harvesting and cannibalism in that respect for, that was over a century ago at this point. But
yeah, right.
So 6G, huh? We are the antennas?
Well, I I hate to, no, I don't hate to burst your bubble, but it's already here. It's already here. It went up with the 5G. And no, they're not going public with that, just like they didn't go public with the drone technology for how many years? 40, 50. And I haven't even mentioned the exotic propulsion technology from the paperclip Nazis. That's 60 years ago. So no, they decide when they want us to know things because they are so far ahead of our public knowledge base. And we're still stuck at this point where we feel like we're on the defensive, that we need to prove that we know these things. So we need papers, we need URLs, we need, patents, etc. No, we don't need to do that. There is an assumption that these things are already here, and there is enough out there, papers and books. You can read those books, but of course, I forgot, excuse me, nobody reads anymore. That's going to kind of influence your knowledge base to where you're dependent on experts, quote unquote, people who are on the okay list of the 6 publishers in the United States who pretty much control the entire publishing industry as per, the big publishers, not the fringe ones. The fringe ones, the small presses, are still going and struggling. But I think we should, again, I'm saying I have ideas by which we should defend ourselves, and it requires moving a little faster than waiting for the experts to pat us on the head and say, "Oh, good job, you're onto something there." No, I think we need to read, we need to think, we need to learn to think again in ways that I mentioned earlier, where we're taking the dots and connecting them and kind of feeling it out. A different kind of thinking than logic that we've always been told is how scientists do things. Well, that really isn't how scientists do things with logic. They're doing the visionary thing as well. They're feeling their way through the future as it comes in conflict with the present and past. So, let's get a little bolder, a little braver here, and just make some assumptions like I do. I mean, I prove things, but no one will believe me because, I don't have some big name somebody or other who is saying I'm right. Well, I have maybe a dozen scientists who follow me, but I don't talk about it. These are guys that have left the fold. They've pulled out of the PhD land where you're rewarded for obeying the way scientism says you should be doing science. So, we have to be more courageous now because truthfully, our lives depend on it. And our blood, how long is it going to last? When I looked at my blood, and I've been a health nut all my life. I mean, I don't go to doctors. The last time I went to a doctor, other than Anna Mihalcha recently, I went to her to just start trying out some of her ideas for people who have blood work that doesn't look so great. But as far as a doctor, I haven't been to a doctor since I was 13. I figured out at 13, shoot, these guys are into making money because a guy took my appendix out and it didn't need to come out. And I knew that, but I was afraid that my stepmother would send me back to my mother. And no way did I want to go back. So, we have to really take a really good look. And that's the advantage of the last 4 years. We have seen them lie through their teeth. We have seen doctors paid off to put down fake death certificates and to make us take shots that don't do us any good, in fact, may kill us. And we now know that. And we don't want to forget that expertise of the PhD or the medical degree, any of those, may not be what it seems, that you can trust that person to be professional. My experience is that most people, professionals or otherwise, are not professional. They are not. They will lie for advantage. So, we're on our own, and we need some new skills and new tools. And that's what I'm hoping for. And as far as the 5G, 6G, the problem is you could go out and buy a hand meter, but will it read 5G? I mean, they've made it so that there's almost nothing that will read 5G. Well, then you think you're going to find one that reads 6G? I don't think so.
I mean, wouldn't your phones be that meter? Wouldn't you look down your phone, see what kind of service you have, and wouldn't that be a good way of knowing what the strength of the signal is?
I don't know. I don't own a cell phone. Remember, I think it's a weapon system.
Okay. Well, see, well, there you go. Well, I'll tell you right now. Hold on. Yeah. Well, I guess I have 2 bars, so I'm in like lower end of the spectrum 5G.
Well, that's what it says.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to necessarily. I go by my health. I know after 77 years, I know this body, and I've been a health nut since I was in my early 20s when I studied Chinese medicine, and I thought, wow, Chinese medicine, 5,000 years old, it's far superior to Western medicine. I'm going to become a Chinese medical doctor, and I was on my way to China when suddenly life gave me a big left turn. And I ended up in Waldorf education to get children to have a real childhood. So, the use of the body as a reading implement, we just need to learn to reread our bodies. And I'm going to talk about that in this synthetic biology book, because I have real ideas on how you can at least ameliorate your situation. I can't end the geoengineering. No, they will never. That's secret space program stuff. They will never end that, because at this point, they still need to ionize the atmosphere. If they figure out how they can keep the atmosphere ionized without the endless chemtrails with particulates and the situation they have with the ionosphere, where they're using the phased array antennas like the ones up in Gakona, Alaska at HARP. They're using those in order to ionize, bring more ions down to our atmosphere, and use it as a weapon. I don't have much hope in that direction at this point, but I do have ideas on how you can make your life relatively safe, but not if you just make a lot of assumptions. You're going to have to really think things through, and that's the challenge. Is people can't really think. I don't know if they know what thinking is. I think they think thinking is, when I say the word thinking, they're thinking, oh, she's talking about I need to pick up a quart of milk when I go out before I come home again. No, that's not thinking. That's just a grocery list thing.
Well,
so
I believe that there is just really not a lot of. There's not a lot of inspiration for people to consider this stuff. I mean, listen. Listen, Elana. Whenever you come on, I mean, I love going down these rabbit holes with you, but still, sometimes it's a lot for me. And I think about average people who are not unintelligent; they are just in other routines, and this is really science fiction, novel kind of stuff that when we talk. We're considering the gravity of the situation where we're inside of the movie and we're not just observers or anything like that, which of course is also part of the reason why I wonder when you have such an anesthetized, rabble, the average person out there who's just out there trying to, make their monthly nut and cover their overhead, put some food on the table and all that stuff. It's not very hard to dominate a person like that. To be honest, just run-of-the-mill politics usually keeps people in orbit and keeps them on an acceptable little, I don't know, flashcard of opinions about any number of mainstream hot topics and controversies and all that stuff. When I think about what you are describing being done to the entire planet, I say, why the hell would anybody put themselves in such a highly toxic environment just to be able to dominate people who are already prone to just not, we're not, the average person, which makes up the multitude, the majority of the planet, is not looking for ways to take over the planet. They're looking for ways to solidify the economics of their small little homes and apartment buildings. They don't want to cause any trouble. So why would you ionize and soak the entire planet in nanotechnology and things that are going to get both the controllers and the controlled sick at the same time? If it's hard to keep the stuff out of our bodies, why would you do that when you can do far less to control the people?
But you're simplifying it in a way that I don't. Elites, I'm tracking people who really want to understand this from the bottom to the top, and this technology. I could talk about this technology in a variety of ways, but I'm looking for the people who know when. Who want to understand how evil works, for one thing. Real evil. We're not talking about just, a devil with a tail and beard and stuff. No, we're talking about how you would do evil through technology, because we're going to need to know that where we're going. We're going into AI, an AI controlled world. That's what's coming. It'll be everywhere.
Can I ask you one focused question, another focused question on where you are right now, just because we're running out of time at this point. With that evil, though, you were bringing up compartmentalization when you came up, when we first started talking. How, in this respect, does one of those evil planners keep themselves compartmentalized and clear of all of the things that is destroying the average person's blood and infiltrating the average person's body, things that someone like you, who studied this nonstop for decades now, has a hard time keeping out of themselves, no matter how clean the living is? Why?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, wait a minute. Let's not attribute things. I have never been sick with the COVID, so-called COVID. It doesn't exist.
Oh, I understand that.
I don't, and virus doesn't exist, so there is no contagion. It's more a matter of the electromagnetics that you wanted to talk about.
Exactly. I'm talking about the nanotechnology. I'm talking about the nanotechnology, like the smart dust, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying,
the nanotech is in our bodies and is in my body. Yes. Am I getting any side effects from it? Well, it's definitely messing with our blood, definitely. And our blood looks not good, according to not just Anna Mihalcha, but according to a lot of doctors and a lot of medical techs who are going and doing live blood analysis. They're seeing that, holy cow, what has happened here? Because it's all murky, and there's actual lots of crystallization going on that shouldn't be going on. There's a hydrogel in there. There's graphene oxide in there. There's all kinds of things that have been injected into people, and then are also apparently, certainly graphene oxide is coming down from the sky. I know that is a lot of this stuff, and we're breathing in from 25 years of geoengineering. Yes, we have a challenge, a very big challenge. But that's the advantage to human development. Now, you may think that when you finally give up this mortal coil, that's it, and there is no life beyond. I am not one of those people that has that thought form. I perceive death as being pretty much that I'm like a letter that I'm writing to myself, and other people are writing to me that I encounter here on planet Earth in my brief life. And in that letter, I've got down a whole bunch of ideas that I want to work on over time, because time is my great friend as a human being in development, in the process of human evolution, which I am in the process of, not in a Darwinian physical way, but in a spiritual consciousness way. So I look at death as being, I take that envelope at my final breath and slip it under a door, and I'm in that letter, and I go to another room of consciousness, and I continue working. Now, I could be completely deceived. We all know that, or nuts, for that matter, in this world. But for me, I know what I'm doing. And I invite, when I come on your show or some other show, I'm not really interested in pleasing listeners, and I'm no fearmonger. I know that, but I'm laying it out as I see it, and I'm working my tail off to make sure the public understands the situation for those few people who are not programmed, who actually see the advantage of learning that there is this very sophisticated system that they could help to unlock with greater skill than I. So that's kind of how I explain it to myself. I don't know. Does that sound crazy?
No. Hey, listen, everybody. I like listening to where people are coming from. It's a little bit outside of. I think my question was a little bit more simple in the respect that if we're all sharing the same planet, there are the average people, and then there are those who would want to put evil, manipulative plans like this into
Right.
work.
And
how do they keep?
Well, I wanted to just add, because you're right, I missed that point. The elites are not particularly interested in money. I think you can see that. That's not their point. They want power over this world. They want raw power over this world.
I'm talking more about their bodies, though. I was curious about their bodies.
They have the best air filters, the best. They have chefs who cook the best organic food from farms that they have, where everything is pure. They know what they're going into, and they have it covered. They have it covered. Take my word. Not their minions. They don't give a hoot about their minions. Their minions are just going to die like anyone else, and maybe give profits to the medical and big pharma industries. No, but for themselves, oh yeah, they have the antidote. Of course they do. Just like they did for AIDS. They didn't die of AIDS. Not at all. They had the antidote.
Elana is always a good one. Now, listen, you said this is coming out. Your next book is not coming out on the 4th or the 25th, because I saw the 25th.
4th, February 4. I'm 6 months late because I really felt I had to rewrite 3 chapters to make them stronger. And so February 4, the book was supposed to be out in the summer.
Okay.
But this is good. This is good.
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait to see the response to it all. And I wish we had a couple more minutes, because I wanted to ask you some brief thoughts about what you thought about the GATE and the TAG programs that were rolled out in American schools decades ago. Because I know you're big on MK Ultra. I didn't know if you had any insight into GATE and TAG, but if you have some, if you can fit it into 60 seconds. That would be great, because we're going to be doing a bigger show on that soon. But
no, I don't, Frank, because I really don't know about that. I haven't followed that up.
Okay, well, no problem. Well, so we did a lot tonight. Given
that I was late, I'm sorry I was late.
It's all right. It's all right. If next time when we'll get our time zones together, and hopefully we can take a little bit more calls. But the thing there too is, we're connecting the coasts and all these types of operations that people assume are going on. And there's all types of media control that are thrown out there, try to muddy the waters, make people feel stupid for considering certain things. And who knows? But I always know what we're going to get when you come on, Elana, and it's always a great time. Sometimes it's a little bit daunting, but at the same time, there is always a call to action at the end, and that is don't give up without a fight. And to keep learning, and of course, I don't know, go off on the beaten path and give people some options outside of the system. So, if there's anything else you want to tag up, or go ahead.
One final thought is to prepare for whatever you need to do in order to meet this challenge that is now planetary. Decrease your electromagnetic footprint. Decrease it. You don't have the biology, particularly if you are not in the first transhuman race that has now been prepped with a vax. If you are a regular human, you don't have the capacity to turn that technology into good for your biology. So decrease it. and I'll talk more. And in the book, I definitely go into how you do that. You know, how you decrease it, because a lot of people don't even know that.
And the book is called The Geoengineered Transhuman: The Hidden Technologies of HARP, Chemtrails, 5G, 6G, Nanotechnology, Synthetic Biology, and the Scientific Effort to Transform Humanity. A lot of that came out in the last hour of conversation. So I hope that you go get the nitty-gritty over there and be on the lookout, because it's available. I saw it available on Amazon, all the regular places. So it's got pretty good distribution. You should be able to find it all over the place. But Elana Freeland, thank you so much for the time tonight. It's always great having you on.
Oh, thanks, Frank, and for putting up with me. I know I'm problematical.
No, not at all. You're provocative, and that's what I'm looking for. So thanks so much again.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, take care.